Who are you? Where are you right now? Are you at work? At play? Alone? In a crowd? Are you in motion? At rest? How's your hair? What are you wearing? Who are you? Is there more to you than what other people see? Character design is a fundamental aspect of visual storytelling, but there's much more to character design than the visual aspects. Disney visual development artist James Woods, best known for his animation character design work on Mary Poppins Returns, joins me for today's lesson: Character Design and the Illusion of Life. My friends, and welcome to the Visual Storytelling Podcast, where I help artists and writers find healthy, fulfilling careers in animation, games, comics, film, and illustration. I'm your host, Chris Oatley. I'm a visual development artist and illustrator, most notably for Disney. And if you want to become a professional visual storyteller like the guests on this show, or many of my students, check out the courses and resources at chrisoatley.com. That's chrisoatley.com. Download the PDF guide for today's lesson at chrisoatley.com/JW. That's JW for James Woods. And visit chrisoatley.com/JW bonus to download a deleted scene where James talks about the difference between working alone as a student and working in the studio environment at Disney. And if you like today's lesson, please click the thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. Tip number 1. Think like an animator. Before James became a character design wunderkind, he struggled with animation studies that didn't quite fit. As you listen to James's origin story, consider how his training as an animator informs his current profession as a character designer. Oh, and if you don't understand how animators think, don't worry. At the end of this lesson, I'll share a link to my resource list so you can keep learning.
Growing up, I would watch all of these Disney films, and my parents would hand me and my siblings like a stack of paper to kind of keep us occupied. And we would all kind of sit around and have a box of felt tips and crayons and draw as we're watching the film. So I would have the VHS covers kind of lined up in front of me of Little Mermaid and whatever, and I'd just kind of start drawing from there.
Yeah, I liked the covers, and the Little Mermaid cover was one of those that I also drew.
Covers are kind of all of these characters in their kind of hero moment where it's
right.
them at their greatest. And from like the age of 4, I'd said, like, watching the Little Mermaid or something, I want to do this. My parents kind of luckily kept all of these drawings, which I did as a kid. And I have this really big back catalogue of all of these terrible like trace overs or weird kind of egg-shaped aerials and whatever, which for some reason, going from egg aerial, my parents kind of thought that there was some promise in this. And so they bought me all of these kind of color by number, like an undersea coral reef kind of scene or something. And then the teachers could maybe see that I was a little bit easily distracted or wasn't necessarily engaged. Maybe the more academic side of schooling, but was very keen to be drawing like posters for the classroom. So from there on, I guess I was always kind of known as the kid that drew, but I had no idea about anatomy or really what it was to be like a free thinking artist. But I think when I was 15 in art class, my art teacher at that time knew that I had an interest in animation. I was very keen on becoming a traditional 2D animator. So she actually brought this local animator in who went to the same school but had gone into stop motion animation. So he was like an animator on Corpse Bride and all of these kind of things. And that was, I guess, my first kind of encounter with a professional who kind of put the whole thing into context for me of, oh, this is actually... it's a job. It's a lifestyle. And so that really inspired and kickstarted me in wanting to, I guess, take animation seriously. Because at this point, I went home and was like, I'm going to make my first short film. The film never got made, but I guess I spent my weekends trying to figure out how to animate terribly and not really kind of grasping it.
You were obviously searching, you were exploring animation and perhaps even exploring character design a bit.
But what did you know you were looking for? What were you conscious of?
It was always a keen interest in character. I don't really ever think I crossed over into painting or drawing environments, but to me, it was just really interesting to, it sounds so cheesy, but creating that kind of life on a paper where you felt like there was something existing inside of this drawing, like a backstory or whatever it could be.
The illusion of life. Yeah, that's what
exactly
brought us all here.
A university in the UK called Arts University Bournemouth has an animation program. So went there for 3 years, learned all of the kind of basic ball bounce tests and flour sack and whatever. If we had these assignments like the yawn, I would put together a really simple character at that time to animate, but it was just almost like a kind of stock baby yawning or a stock kid doing a baseball pitch. But on the side of it, I then eventually found character design to kind of keep my, I guess, traditional side alive and interested. So I was kind of dabbling with character design whilst doing these 2D tests, not really thinking that I could become a character designer because I didn't really know what it meant to have a voice as a character designer at that point. Eventually, I picked up some steam with that and saw that I was really enjoying character design and was able to experiment and broaden my design vocabulary to a point where I thought, oh, maybe I could pursue this. So basically went through school here in the UK, graduated in 2013, and then summer 2013, after a couple of years of applying, got accepted into the Disney summer internship at the studio here in Burbank. Came out here for 8 weeks, summer 2013. Had, I think, probably to date, the best summer I've ever had. Just learning, being immersed in the environment. I guess coming from the UK where we don't really have a big animation scene, it was kind of my first time really being exposed to not just like one animator in a building, but a whole bunch of animators and a whole bunch of people in the arts department, and it being this kind of fully functioning Disney entity, whatever. Spent 8 weeks as a character design mentee, which is great. I super encourage everybody to apply for that. And don't be discouraged as well. It took me a couple of years to get accepted. And then returned to school. I went to Cal Arts for a year before then having to discontinue the school just for personal reasons. And then I luckily landed my first freelance job in my last year of school doing 4 weeks on Moana, which was my first feature really. So that was really cool. Especially so as a kid, The Little Mermaid was my favorite film. I'd watch it every day. And so it kind of felt like I was coming around full circle, getting to work underneath Ron and John. I really lucked out with that freelance gig. So was here for 4 weeks, then went back to the UK for about 2 years and was freelancing for Paramount Animation Studios until coming back out here in 2016 to work on the Mary Poppins sequel. Then in May of 2017, offered the role at Disney Animation as a full-time character designer.
Tip number 2. There's a lot more to character design than drawing. A drawing of a character is not the same thing as a character design. A drawing of a character represents one small moment, while a character design is an aggregate. Of course, there are visual aspects of character design, proportion, poses, clothing, color, but it's the invisible aspects, experiences, opinions, and energy, motion and emotion, that combine to create the illusion of life.
Some of the best character designers I know have some sort of animation background.
Mm-hmm.
They have moved a character around in space.
Mm-hmm.
How did really learning the principles of animation and the flour sack and whatnot, how did that change the way that you design characters?
I think it's really important for designers or students coming up to have a grounding in animation, because to me, a design really comes to life when you are thinking about a character in motion as if you are animating. In my Qubit work, I have keyframes and in-betweens pinned up on my walls because I want to be reminded of, I guess, the character's thought process from like A to B and kind of try and install that in my drawings. Having that animation background definitely forces you to think about the particular quirks and nuances they might have in their pose or expression, because nobody moves back and forth in the same way. They have a specific way of kind of going from A to B. Not in like a kind of pantomime sense where it's like an over-exaggerated kind of I'm feeling sad today, so I'm putting my fists to my eyes and I trace the tear down my cheek with my finger. But it's just figuring out how that character in their mindset would go about that in their unique manner. And I think a design to me is successful when you can look at it and imagine how that drawing or character would sound when they're breathing or something. You can imagine if you were to run up to this design and like push them, would they fall over? Or would like the design kind of just like bend around your hands because there's no like physicality or like solidity to them that feels real?
Yeah, we're talking about a character who's alive and has a life outside of that rectangle, that window of the paper that you're looking through to see their life, right? Or the screen if you're watching a movie or something.
You know, exactly. And so much of it is posing an emotion which I think makes up the design, and then the actual aesthetic of them is kind of the icing on top.
Yeah, it's awesome. In my character design class, the students are always sort of shocked and disoriented by this. But the first assignment, I give them the designed character. Literally, I give them a model sheet and say, use this character. And then they act out. They draw the character in different poses and act out a Shakespearean soliloquy without any direction. So they get to decide how melodramatic or how tragic or how comedic or whatever their performance is going to be. But everybody uses the same character, and they're going, why the heck am I doing the same character in a character design class? I'm supposed to be designing characters. And that's when I go, yeah, because there's more to the design than the visual aspects. And that's the first assignment. You identify the spirit of this character. As a character designer, the thing that is going to separate you from the rest of the people just making pretty character drawings is that soul. No matter what you're designing, you have to put that soul into the design.
Tip number 3, design characters from observation. If you want to make your characters seem more alive, draw from life. James and I both learned more about character design from quick sketching random strangers in coffee shops than we did in our art classes. Here's how you can make the most of this essential practice.
I think as a student, I grew the most when I would take days and days at a time just sitting and drawing people in cafes. It's like drawing gym. You're like working out your drawing muscles, having to get the idea of that person, get that pose, get that action down immediately with no fuss around your line. Obviously, you only get that snapshot chance to get them down. And so obviously you have to use artistic license for a lot of the rest of it.
Right.
There was an element of caricature if that person was sat down for a long time and I was able to kind of play with their features or exaggerate aspects of them, whatever. Maybe without even knowing it, that was me. Right? I guess it was kind of me character designing at that time too. But a lot of the time, yeah, when you're cafe sketching, the person is in and out. Bish, bash, bosh, get it done. I can't stress it enough. I think a lot of people, when they want kind of tips about drawing for animation, think that there's like a secret kind of shortcut there. Well, I mean, how do you do it specifically? There's absolutely no shortcut. It doesn't matter if you have a Moleskine sketchbook or a cheap whatever. Like a Moleskine, it feels great to draw in, but it isn't going to suddenly amplify your drawings by whatever kind of account. But sit down with whatever you have. I used to sit down with a little almost like receipt type paper pad and have cheap ballpoint pen or whatever and just draw and draw and draw and draw.
Lined notebook paper. I would draw on spiral notebooks because the nice sketchbook put mental friction in there. And
right, there's that pressure to get it nice. And then if you do a crap drawing, you like have to tear that piece of paper out because you don't. Lo and behold, anybody should go through your fancy Moleskine and find a crap drawing in there.
Yeah, right.
So, but I mean, it's about losing ego. It's just about making as many crap drawings as you can so that eventually 200 crap drawings down, you're going to have one cool one, and then it will become more frequent and you'll start to kind of get a grasp of people, behaviors, all of that kind of stuff, which then informs your character design later on. The thing is, you're observing all of these people around you and drawing from those experiences and injecting that into the experiences of the fictional characters that you're creating somewhere down the line. But I mean, at the heart of it, it's all drawing, whether you're drawing in a cafe for the sake of figuring out posing for animation or story. It's all just comes down to drawing and then really tightening up the connections between your fingers and your eyes and your brain. And it all kind of pays off across the board. So yeah, every student, I just say, if you can't get to a figure drawing class, just get a sketchbook and don't be afraid to sit down in whatever coffee shop or whatever shopping mall and just sketch all day, every day, for years and years and years.
Yeah, right. James Woods is at JamWoodser, that's JamWoodser on Instagram, and I'm at Chris Oatley. Download the PDF guide for today's lesson at chrisoatley.com/JW. That's JW for James Woods. The PDF guide contains a full transcript of this lesson, images, links, and a resource list for those of you who want to design or develop characters that seem more alive but don't yet have any animation training. Visit chrisoatley.com/JW bonus to download the deleted scene where James talks about the difference between working alone as a student and working in the studio environment at Disney. The scene didn't fit within the focus of this episode, which is why it didn't make the final cut, but it's inspiring and insightful nonetheless. And if you like today's lesson, please click the thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, my friends, remember, a good character design has a life of its own.